And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome live from the UK, New York Times bestselling author, Sara Pinborough, here to give us the inside scoop on her brand new Keep You Up at Night thriller, Insomnia. Sara, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about this book.
Well, thank you for having me. And that was the best. You're born for this job. That was the best excited intro to a book that I've ever had. That was so good. Insomnia. I'm going to be really a disappointment after that. I'm very English. It's like, oh, stuff happens. It's a book about a woman. Stuff happens. Not all good. A woman called Emma, who is just about 2 weeks out of her 40th birthday. And she, on the surface, has a perfect life. She's got a stay-at-home husband. She's a divorce lawyer. She's very successful. She's got 2 lovely kids. But she's also carrying the weight of a stay-at-home husband, 2 lovely kids, paying all the bills. So it's one of those lives that looks perfect, but actually she's really kind of, having to work really hard to sustain it all. And 2 weeks out of her 40th birthday, she stops sleeping and starts developing these strange nighttime tics and obsessions. And for the rest of us, that would probably be bad enough. But for Emma, her mother went mad on the night of her 40th birthday and had stopped sleeping for a couple of weeks before. And on the night of her birthday, she did something really, really terrible. And Emma is worried that this is going to happen to her because her mother always said that they were just the same, So it's kind of a descent into paranoia. And as her life starts to unravel, and she's had no sleep, and she's exhausted, and she doesn't trust herself, but neither does she trust anyone around her. So it's a real kind of claustrophobic, is someone messing with me or am I going mad story. It's very cheerful.
It's very cheerful. Well, it is very tense is what it is. And oh my God, you just crank the tension up one sweat-inducing trick at a time. And I can't wait to get into every tasty detail of it. But first, I just want to welcome everybody who's watching with us. So we are broadcasting live to 6 destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So wherever you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. And this is your chance to ask this incredible New York Times bestselling author about insomnia, about her writing process, about these characters, how she does it, why she does it, whatever is hanging out in your brain. Get those questions going in the comments. I'll get them right over to Sara. Anissa Joy, welcome to the conversation. She says, hello, Sara and Sara. I can't wait to hear more about this intriguing book. So Sara, let's start there. What gave you the idea for this woman on the brink, her 40th birthday with the mother madness angle? How did it pop in there?
Well, there were a few things really.
Ooh,
firstly, I kind of, a very tongue-in-cheek way, I wanted to play with the idea that we women all have this, and not our own fault, society has made us, but 40 seems to be a big number for women, like getting older and becoming more invisible because the world is designed for aging men, not aging women. And also this fear we have of turning into our mothers, which I didn't want to make it funny, but I wanted to play with that because I find it really fascinating that this woman that has raised us, and if we're lucky to have had good parents, we should adore for our entire lives. But the minute you get to about 12 years old, if anyone says you even sound like your mother, let alone look like her, it's like the worst insult in the world. And as time goes on, that gets worse and worse and worse. So I kind of wanted to play with that, but also I'd been chatting to the 2 female producers who made Behind Her Eyes, and one of them is a single mum in her 50s. Another one is a married wife in her 30s, but she's the main breadwinner. And we were talking about sorry, let me turn that off. We were talking about female guilt, really, and how so my friend, the producer who's married, she said if she misses a school show or whatever because she's filming, the guilt is incredible. Whereas if a man who has an equal job misses a
Ooh.
school show, it's just like, oh, that's what he does. Says men miss these things. It's terrible that
Mm.
it happens, So we were all saying how, and I'm single with no kids, and people look at you funny for that. Like it's a bit odd, like 50 years old, no children, no husband, that kind of thing is really, people are a bit me. So we were saying how women get judged so much more than men. And then we
Mm.
just all we're saying how exhausted we were. And then, of course, the pandemic came along. And I just noticed that women stopped sleeping. Like,
Yes.
women were doing the homeschooling, the worrying, they're trying to get the men to wear the masks, for the first few months. And this is hugely generalizing. So I know there were lots of sensible men out there, but it seemed to me that my friends' husbands took about a month or two behind the women to really get on board with the fact that this was a dangerous virus. So my friends were all like, you wash your hands, do this, do that, wear a mask in the shop. And they were like, oh, it'll be okay. And so the women were carrying all the weight of the worry
Mm.
and
Mm.
trying to sort of control the environment. And I would text or send an email to my agent in New York, and she would answer it. And I'd be like, Grania, it's 3:00 in the morning over there. What are you doing answering this email? And she'd be like, well, I can't sleep. And then I just got into that and how everyone was tired and hormonal. And I just thought, if you put all these things into a melting pot and see what comes out the other end. And then obviously I like to add a bit of weird into my stories. So then there's a little bit of weird in there as well. So it all kind of fermented and came out.
Ooh, fermented. I like the
Mm.
use of that word. Anissa, thank you for the great question. Anissa is an amazing bookstagrammer, does a lot of big things with friends in fiction. Anissa, thank you for the great question. Always a pleasure to have you. Sarah, thank you for the scoop to get the hashtag BTS behind the scenes on how this book came to be. That's fascinating. Catherine, welcome to the conversation. Joining us live from Seattle today. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Let us
My
know.
ex-flatmate lives in Seattle now. He married
Really?
a man called Brian who lives in Seattle. And so now he works for Amazon and lives there.
Oh, wow. So I've actually never been to Seattle. It's on my list. We have a mysterious fan joining us saying that they loved this book. Oh, it's Nancy Morrow Wren joining us from my private mystery and thriller mavens group. Nancy is an amazing bookstagrammer as well. Nancy, welcome to the conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for liking my book.
Yay. Catherine saying this is so right. What you're talking about with the stress of the women not sleeping, bearing the responsibility, the pressures
And
bearing
it's very
down.
much, it's like the world has said to us, oh, well, you want to have it all, there, have it all, and now deal with it. And actually, it's like, well, men have never had to do that. Like friends of mine I've got a friend called Emma who has 2 children and a husband who works from home. So I did use her life a little bit. And she is like, she's like a director of a company that's, I guess, the equivalent of like Home Depot, so it's a massive nationwide store. And we were away for a weekend. And she rang her husband because the kids had some sports thing. And she was having to tell him where the sports kit was and what they should be wearing. And I was like, surely he knows. You've had these children for like 11 years now. That must, he must know. She was like, no, she goes, he'd dress them in anything. He literally would just put them in anything and send them out the door. So she was, women seem to have to manage everything.
Exactly. And one thing I noticed, and I noticed this, which was hashtag relatable, as I was reading this book, is that, Emma is, as you said, out there supporting her family. She's the sole and primary breadwinner, the only breadwinner. Robert has chosen to stay home with the kids, raising their teenage daughter Chloe and their 5-year-old Will. But Emma comes home from work and notices that, oh, the carpet hasn't been vacuumed, the laundry basket's overflowing, the hedges need to be trimmed. Like, her female brain notices things that his male brain seems to be happily oblivious about. So she's trying to manage both, and that just cranks up the tension. Not to mention facing this 40th birthday, and we all do feel that pressure. I was freaking out for probably a decade before I turned 40. I was counting down since my 20th birthday. I was like, I'm halfway there.
I remember someone saying to me on my 20th birthday, you're halfway to 40. And I thought, oh my God, that seems so like old. And now I'm like, God, I'd kill to be 40 again.
Right, exactly. Now I'm like, fabulous 40. That sounds good. We have another fan, a mysterious fan watching. We're broadcasting to 2 private Facebook groups, Mystery and Thriller Mavens, my group, and Bitchy Bookworms. Someone saying, I cannot wait for this group, for this book. Hooray. Thank you so much for joining us. Catherine would like to know, did you write during the pandemic? So what effect has the pandemic had on your writing, Sarah? Let's hear about that.
To start with, like everybody else, I think I watched all of Netflix, ate a lot of chocolate, and thought we were all going to die. It was that kind of like, I thought if I stepped out, I mean, I have a dog, so I had to go out twice a day. But I was like, my mom, who is, we're not the closest of people, me and my mother, but she lives, thankfully, my sister lives with her. They live like half a mile away. And I would walk past and see them through the window. And I'd be texting my sister saying, do not let her leave the house. She's 80 years old. And, so at first I was really stressed because I grew up with like Stephen King's The Stand. And so I was really in that sort of virus mindset. But then after a little while, I mean, I was in the lucky position as I had this book to write, but I was also planning to write the TV version alongside the book version. So I started with episode 1. So I was working with Left Bank, who made Behind Her Eyes. So we were doing episode 1. So that got me back in the zone. And then, I mean, it was a completely different, the core principle was the same, but the characters were quite different and everything. And then it got to the point where I just thought, no, I've got to write the book first, because otherwise the book's never going to get written, because TV is such a slow process. So I stopped that, but it had fired me up to start the book. So then I wrote the book, but I also had, I wrote another TV pilot for another company. I was in a writer's room for a while on Zoom. So that was nice because it, kept you kind of sane and talking to other people. So yeah, I worked quite a lot actually. I mean, but I am a hermit by choice. If I have more than 1 or 2 things in my diary for the week, I get a bit stressed out. And now that everything's opened up again and it's like going into London twice a week, and I keep sort of saying, I leave my dog with the dog sitter for the day. And I say, I'm off into London to get my COVID. I'll be back this afternoon. And then I'm like, did I get any COVID? No, I'm okay. So it's a weird, because it's kind of like the pandemic's over, but the pandemic's not over. So it's this weird sort of hybrid life. But yes, I did. And I once I got started with it was fine to write. I think once I got past that initial couple of months where I just watched sitcoms and stuff and movies. I watched a lot of old 1940s film noirs. I rewatched like all the old like Witness for the Prosecution and Double Indemnity and all these kind of
Rear Window.
Yeah, I love all these old films. So I just went on a bit of a jag of watching old films, and then I realized that I probably should write a book. Because I was also, when you're in the lucky position, I had friends who were a couple of friends of mine had become self-employed just before the pandemic. So they got no furlough. So they got, they had no money coming in. The government wouldn't give them any money because they weren't in a job. So I thought, well, at least I'm lucky. I had money coming in. So I thought it was, I should earn it really. If you're in the position to be able to earn money without having to go out and work in a supermarket and get COVID, then I was being silly to not do it. So yeah.
I have it exactly, and it's a struggle with feeling like you should, but then also having trouble concentrating when you're worried that we're all going to die. And there's
my reading went out the window. Reading totally died for me for ages, and I've started to get back into that now. But I couldn't read. I could watch TV, but I couldn't read.
Same. My concentration shrank to the size of a gnat. I couldn't read for a long time. All I could do was just sit and worry and fret and wash
my hands
and wash my hands and watch TV.
Yeah.
Sarah, you said that you took all of these sort of simmering tensions that we were all witnessing in the world, and then you quote added a little weird to it and let it ferment. Anissa is saying we all need a little weird in our lives, that you like weird. What is it that you like about weird? What fascinates you?
I mean, I think when I was a kid, from a very young age, like I remember someone gave me Peter Pan as a kid, like when I was like 5 or 6, and I loved it. I loved the idea of things that are just out of sight. And I started off writing horror novels. My first 6 books were horror novels. And then I wrote historical crime horror. Then I wrote fantasy. And then I've written fairy tales. So I've traditionally come from a background of very, very weird, So then with Behind Her Eyes was my first sort of mainstream thriller. And even that, I thought I want to put something odd into that. So I just like to put something strange into something very, very normal. So you've got a very, very normal situation and then just something a little bit paranormal, I guess, rather than
Ooh.
supernatural. I would say paranormal.
Oh,
Yeah.
fascinating, fascinating. We have a friend joining us from Texas. Oh, hello, Christine. Mott, welcome. She says she is watching us live from Texas, and that we women are used to multitasking. Amen. Right? If we're not doing 5 things at once, we might as well be doing nothing.
But it would be good if the men got a bit better at it and took 3 of those 5 or 2 of those 5 things and actually just had them done without needing a list,
Exactly. And Catherine, who's watching from Seattle, sharing that she's English as well. She's from England. Oh, perfect. The
Yeah.
perfect blend of British and Seattle. That sounds fabulous. Thanks so much for watching with us. Leela, welcome to the conversation. She's saying, I
Thank you,
just
Leela.
bought this book. Yay. Thanks, Leela. Let us know what you think about it, what page you're up to, what you're thinking, where you think this is going. Catherine is saying insomnia is a big bad word for me, and it was a hill I had to get over. So I also a lifelong sufferer of sleeplessness and insomnia here. Sarah, I noticed in your dedication that you dedicated this book to a fellow sleepless friend. For Jessica, producer, dream maker friend, and fellow sufferer of sleeplessness. I loved that. I thought, what a lovely dedication. So,
Sometimes it's nice to remember that other people don't sleep very well too, because when
yeah,
you're awake in the night, you kind of feel like you're totally on your own and the world is asleep.
yes.
But actually, all the night owls are still up, even if they're not insomniacs. Like my friend Callie Taylor, she writes as CL Taylor. And we did an event together a couple of weeks ago, and she goes to bed at 4 in the morning when I get up at 4:30 in the morning. So
Wait,
I was
and
like, oh,
which author is this, Sarah?
CL Taylor.
CL Taylor. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm also a night owl.
Are you? You see,
So
I'm an early bird. I like to be up with the lark, but then often I'm still awake at like 12:30, 1 o'clock. But then I wake up at 4:30. But I go to bed like 10 with a book. Like I will go to sleep, and then like I'm there still reading, doing a bit of Duolingo, Wordle. Like,
what language are you learning in Duolingo?
French,
Okay.
French.
So I picked up Duolingo in the pandemic as well. I'm learning Italian. So high five for the Duolingo.
I'm on
Anyone
day
else?
100. I'm on day 190 without a break.
And how's it go? Wow. Oh my God.
Mm,
Congratulations. How's it
yeah.
going? Are you feeling fluent in French yet?
Well, I did A-level French
Oh,
at
perfect.
school, so that's like college entry level
Yeah.
French, but that was a long time ago. So a lot of it is coming back. I wanted to do Spanish, but I thought French is the one I'm probably best at in my memory's got more French locked away in it. So yeah, it's coming,
Great.
it's definitely, I feel like I could go to France and I might not be able to speak it very well, but I would understand quite a lot.
Well, they would appreciate the effort, I think.
No, the French hate it. French is, unless you can do it perfectly, they look at you with disdain, and I respect that because the English really need to get a bit of disdain from other language speakers because we're so rubbish.
Oh my
Like we just expect everyone to speak English. It's like, oh yeah,
yeah.
but the rest
Well,
of Europe is like, really make more of an effort.
I tried to learn French at uni in college, but I struggle with the RL sound, like the je ne parle pas français. It's a hard sound to make as the RL. So I
Yeah,
turned to Italian with Duolingo, and I'm hoping it's just innately in my DNA that it will come out somehow.
you
I don't
look
know.
like you should speak it fluently, so it'll be
Yes,
like
I
you
feel
just
like as
you
a
could
fellow,
probably
I
do the face expressions and just like
exactly. Anissa saying, since you like to add a little weird to your books, does this make you step away at times because it has gotten too weird? Or is there a too weird? Or is there never too weird? Let's lean in on the weird, Sarah.
Well, I think it depends what you're writing. So
Okay.
if I'm like on a practical level, if I'm writing a psychological thriller with some weird in, it has to be a psychological thriller first and foremost. So the weird will be central, but the clues have to play out like a thriller and the characters have to behave like a thriller. If I want to go too weird, I'd write it as a horror story or a ghost story and so then everything is leaning into the weird. Whereas so with Behind Her Eyes, all the clues are there from page one, but it reads very much like a thriller until you realize there's something weird going on. And the same with this one. It reads very much like a straightforward thriller. This one's a little bit more creepy.
Mm.
But yeah, so there's no such thing as too weird, but you then have to redefine the genre you're working in.
Ooh,
Because
interesting.
because your publisher will. Before I wrote Insomnia, I handed in, so after Dead to Her, I handed in, I think, 11 outlines to my editor. And she was like, this one's not psychological thriller enough. This one's weird. This one's a horror. This one's not a thriller. This one is a crime story. So, obviously once they start putting you in an alleyway, they want you to stay in your alleyway. So yeah, so my alleyway is psychological thrillers with a bit of weird. So I have to keep it within this framework.
Ah,
But now it
okay,
is
okay.
anyway.
It's interesting that your lane, as we say over here, is psychological thrillers with some weird. That's a very unique.
It's a very specific Pinborough lane. I think there's maybe me and CJ Tudor. There's like the two of us are in our kind of weird lane.
Exactly. Oh, fascinating, fascinating. So I'm also a huge fan of 1940s noir and actually all 1940s movies. I'm a huge, huge old movie buff. Cary Grant was my first crush.
Oh,
I love him. And so many people are chiming in. Leela saying that she loves old movies. Catherine saying she loves old movies. So many people also loving old movies with us. So we are in the right place. Heather Gudenkoff, New York Times bestselling author of 8 books, most recently The Overnight Guest. Welcome to has entered the chat. Welcome
now
to the
I've got
conversation.
stage fright.
Yay! Hi, Heather. Hi, Heather. So great to see you. She says Team Hitchcock all the way. Heather, so great to see you here. Thanks for joining us. Dana Belden, welcome to the conversation. Thanks so much. Leila saying she loves all of your books. Sarah, Leila, let us know if you have a favorite.
I think she was probably speaking to the New York Times bestselling author a second ago.
I think
that's her comment for her.
You're being quite modest and lovely, and I bet Leila loves both of you because you're both amazing writers. Catherine is saying there is no such thing as too weird. Some other,
yeah, she's obviously not met some of my ex-boyfriends because some of them were a little too weird.
and that's why they're your ex.
Yeah, that's why they're exes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, Sarah, this book is racking up so much incredible praise. Lisa Jewell raving. If you loved Behind Her Eyes, prepare to be totally and utterly blown away by Insomnia. Sarah Pinborough is a twisted genius. So let's talk about your twisted genius, Sarah. So let us know. So how does your twisted genius write her books? Do you outline everything? You said you handed in 11 outlines to your editor, then you picked one together.
Pitches, I do outline because I think I work on lots of different, I have to have the ending. I have to see, the ending has to be locked in. So I have to see the entire ending before I start.
So you see the ending so you have the idea and you know the ending of the book, then you fill it in, or how exactly does it work?
Well, so I have the ending and I'll have like that. So the ending, the final chapter of Behind Her Eyes was in the pitch for the book. Yeah. I have to have it. I can't start writing unless I have the ending totally locked.
Does the ending ever change though? Like based on as you're writing?
No.
Wow. Okay.
Everything else changes in the plan, but the ending never changes. I work towards that ending, and things can change along the way, but the end, because then I just wouldn't be able to start writing if I didn't think it was the right ending. And so that, it's always with that really, that works kind of feeling. I mean, it might not work, but in my head, it works at the time. And so then I try and plan. I'll have a notebook and I'll have kind of rough ideas for the characters. And then I'll try and put some temp pegs in. So like end of Act 1, this should be at this point, big reveal here, twist there. So I know that there's going to be some kind of what I'm working towards. I'll put the key moments in and then work towards them. And obviously, as you go, better ideas come along and you change things and characters change and stuff. But the ending never changes. So I try and kind of plan 10,000 words at a time, really, around those tent pegs. And so then I'll write the 10,000 words, and I'll plan the next 10,000 words, and I'll write those 10,000 words, plan the next. But because I work on lots of different things, so at the moment I'm working on 1 film, 3 TV projects, and obviously got to start the new book. So there's a lot of stuff going round and round and round. So I couldn't do it without planning. So I like to have something planned before I leave it. So if I've got to do a redraft on a script, I will make sure I've got 5,000 words planned out, so that when I come back to it, I'm like, oh yeah, here's where I was. And it's the hard work is done. So then you get into the zone of it again. But I'm a lot slower than I used to be, because I work on more things than I used to.
Wow. Catherine's saying, wow, that's so much you're working on.
Because I don't have a life.
but
dog and work.
But to Lisa Jewell's praise, you are an evil genius, because every single thing is so on point, and the tension, you just you come in at a 12 and you take it right up to a 15. I mean, you're just at a constant simmer, and sort of the characters are ready to boil over. You've got the kid issue, then you're worried about the, Emma's worried about her 40th birthday, and she's trying to get a promotion at work, and then someone's keying her car, and it's just, and then she's got her sister who's popped back up, and just and just when you think like, oh my God, if you're not already sleepless, this book will keep you up at night. So I love how you sort of keep adding, one little thing as an in. Ian Rankin raving creepy as all get out, a gaslighting masterclass. So let's talk about gaslighting again. So many of these 1940s noir are sort of about gaslighting. So how do you go about creating that gaslighting feeling without making us feel that we can't trust what's going on? How do you do that?
Well, I think in this book it was probably easier than in some other books.
Ooh,
because Emma's not sleeping, and because, I mean, when I was researching Insomnia, because obviously I don't sleep, but I'm not like someone who's hospitalized with it or anything, but if you go without any sleep at all for 3 or 4 days, you will be hallucinating. You are literally starting to get dementia from that point on. So she's obviously getting like an hour here and an hour there, but she's not sleeping a lot. So she's really starting to lose her marbles.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it a lot easier, because she's seeing everything around her through this prism of her own fear about inherited madness, plus her not sleeping. So it's like taking the unreliable narrator to the next level, because she doesn't trust herself. So she doesn't trust herself. So we don't know what to trust either, because she doesn't know if it's in her head or is it somebody else, or is she doing this herself? And then, like her kid starts doing these really creepy drawings, and it's all like, is this me? Is this him? What's going on? Why is my child scared of me? And so that, she's almost gaslighting herself to a certain extent, because she just can't figure out what's going on, because she's not in a good enough position to.
But then Robert is also cranking that up by saying, well, you keep waking him up by going into checking on him. So then of course,
Robert, the husband, I've much maligned men in this conversation so far, but I think I was also quite interested in, these kind of stay-at-home husbands and how they feel about the world. I think at one point I literally lifted something that Jess, who I dedicated the book to, the producer, her husband said to her, I don't know if I put it in the book, but I've put it in episode 1 of the screenplay, and he said something to her like, I just feel like nothing I say is valued, like nothing I say has any weight, because the decisions are made by you. And I thought it was when she told me, I said, it's so weird, because that's such a stereotypically female role, and it could have been said by any. If someone gave you that line and said, did the man or the wife say this, you would think the wife said it,
right?
I think there's something really interesting in men who've been quite brave to stay at home and have that kind of male thing of they're supposed to be the breadwinner and then stay at home, but then that gets boring for them too. So Robert is in this stage of, he's not really sure he wants to stay at home anymore. So I think the dynamic is quite interesting.
The
between them.
dynamic is so interesting. And actually, last week I just hosted Sally Hepworth, the incredible Australian author of most recently The Younger Wife, and her husband is a stay-at-home husband and father. So it's so interesting to start to explore these and see these roles more often. Courtney Smirachinsky, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Courtney's an amazing bookstagrammer. I'm going to drop her link right here. She is Caffeine Read Repeat. She would like to know, Sarah, what has been your favorite? She's joining us live from Canada. She says, Sarah, what has been your favorite book to write out of all of the books you've written? I'm such a huge fan. I love all the books you've written. I can't wait to read this Twisted Chocolate Mind Pretzel.
I want that at the front of the book. A Twisted
Courtney,
Chocolate Mind Pretzel.
she writes the funniest, most adorable book reviews ever. So I'm dropping her link in here. Everybody, she's so funny. So check it out.
Cool.
So
Sarah, I don't know what is the best one because this is book number 28.
My God, woman, you're amazing.
The first one came out December 2004. So it's a lot of books. But I think, oh God, it just changes. You know, there's a few that I'm fond of. I really like my fairy tale trilogy, Poison, Charm and Beauty. And I really like the Dog-Faced Gods trilogy. I think when they're trilogies, I like them because, I mean, I don't like writing them because they go on forever. But when I look back on them, I spent a lot of time in those worlds. So they seem like more of a lasting impression than some of the others. I think I probably like them all now that I'm getting older. I think even the early horror novels that I'm a bit like ashamed of because the grammar and stuff was terrible. But I still think, they were early books, so I was quite proud of them. But I think a lot of people say The Death House is maybe my best book, but I don't know. I like the fairy tales; they were fun.
Wow, number 28. All hail the queen! My God, woman, teach me your ways. Catherine speaking for all of us, saying, "What?"
I know. It's like people always say to me, "Oh, I read your first book," and I think they mean Behind Her Eyes, and that was my 23rd book.
Wow, Sarah,
what did you know? Because I think we live in this era of the debut is king. Like you so often see these enormous debut books, like a first-time writer who gets some enormous deal, and the book comes out, and it does really well. And I think it makes people think that if they haven't had a smash hit with their first book, that they're destined for failure. And that isn't the case. It's a long road and it goes like this. And you see some people get a big hit and then there's nothing for years. Other people just steadily trot along making a living. So I have no kind of expectations of the business. I understand what it's like to be earning low and I understand what it's like to be earning high. And I know that the truth sits somewhere in the middle,
Oh my gosh, you're getting so many hearts up on Facebook for that. So this is clearly resonating. Thank you for sharing that. And it's so true. I'm so tired of these 30 under 30, 40 under 40, 20 under 20.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate people who are doing things whenever they're doing them and have taken the time to marinate and to curate and to grow in a meaningful way. I
think it's like we all suffer a little bit from social media. Like, but when I started out writing, there literally was there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, if you were lucky, there was a chat room somewhere, so you had to go to events and you had to do other stuff, but you also just sat at home and got on with it, whereas now I think it's very easy, and whatever level you're at, I bet even Stephen King sometimes looks at some praise for somebody else's book on Twitter and thinks, oh my God, am I ever going to hit that height again? Or, like everyone has it, don't we? We see everybody else's good stuff and we spend all our time thinking, oh my God, what if my book fails? And actually, this part of why I like living in a small market town where literally no one in my town is an author. All my friends have got jobs and all kinds of different things. And I know loads of people from dog walking in the park. And it's healthy. If a book doesn't sell, if I lost my book deals tomorrow, hopefully not, but if that happened, they would still be my friends. There would be no, you don't see plumbers hanging out entirely with other plumbers. And I don't think plumbers have writers' egos. So I think that you've got to balance it and do not take social media very seriously and step away from it, because people are not posting their entire lives. They're not posting their entire careers either, because there are plenty of lows that people don't post,
Exactly.
Whereas everyone posts the highs. Very few people say, oh God, you know, like my book sales are shit this week, or you know, like no one
Right.
posts that stuff. They post, oh my god, look at my show on Netflix. And
Right.
who really cares about your show on Netflix apart from you? You know, so there is
Well, I mean, I
kind of
think we all care about your show on
no,
Netflix,
but
Sarah.
you
We
know,
were
like
all
it's
addicted.
sometimes you think, you know, like I mean, I was terrible for getting overexcited and we were in lockdown, but I think next time, she says, hopefully, I'll be a bit more circumspect and maybe post some bad stuff, because it's too easy for new writers to either buy into the hype of social media, which is a waste of time and doesn't sell any books,
Mm,
really. You know, like those days are
mm,
done if ever they were here. And just get on with writing and doing stuff you enjoy, and don't get suckered into believing everybody else's hype. Listen to your
mm.
grandmother. You know, like
I love that. I love that. Um, Jilly McMillan, who was on the show a few weeks ago, raving Sarah Pinborough is the master of the unexpected, and Insomnia does not disappoint. This terrifying thriller about a family under threat from within is a total page turner. So, Sarah, as both a horror writer and 28 books in, what have you learned about the craft of creating fear?
oh, I don't
Because it's
really
hard
know.
to write fear, isn't it? It's hard not to be
Mm.
cheesy.
I think there are two things that,
Ooh, tell
and
me.
again, I'm not a great believer in giving advice because everyone has their own way of doing things. But for me, I have read a couple of supernatural thrillers that have been written by very good crime writers who decided to have a go at a supernatural thriller. And they put the supernatural in way too fast, way too early. Because I think you want to sink people into the world. You can have a shadow, you can have a little glitch as they feel a bit nervous about something, but if you go too hard too quickly, you haven't set the scene. You know, like the what you know, horror writers. When I look at crime writers are much more sparse with their language choices because a lot of it is about pace. Thriller writers, anyway, it's a lot about pace. So shorter sentences, straight to the point, punchy, punchy, punchy. Horror writers, slower, more descriptive, more scene setting. So, you know, like it's a really, they use a whole different language sets. So I think
Mm,
if you want to infuse some creepiness into a thriller, you kind of still need to keep that sparse pace because thriller readers want chapter, 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 chapter. But when you start seeding the weird, just a little drop here, a little drop there, and let it build. Like, you know, that Chinese water torture where it's first one drop doesn't matter, but when you're getting that same drop in the same place for hours, that's really going to start having an effect. So I always think less is more, I guess, would be my takeaway from that. So there's a book called, which I would suggest anybody who's interested in writing anything creepy
mm.
should read, called Dark Matter by Michelle Paver.
Ooh.
And it's not a very long book. And it's set in like an Antarctic or Arctic station.
Mm.
I think it's like 1910 sort of time.
Mhm.
And it's just really creepy, but it never goes over the top. But it really scares you. So it's
Mm.
really gentle building of the creepiness. And I think we are not scared by the monster. We're scared by the threat of the monster. So we're
Ooh.
not scared of, like, if the monster comes out from the bed, yes, okay, we now know there's a monster, but we've seen it. When you just see a shadow move under the bed, that's much scarier than knowing what the shadow is under the bed. Or if the cupboard door creaks open a gap and there's just that black space, that's a lot more creepy than the cupboard door swinging open and there's a monster in there, you know?
Ooh, fascinating,
That's just my
fascinating.
take on it, is less is more.
I love that. I love that. Less is truly more. This is so fascinating because when you think about, you know, how you when you're sitting here reading a book, I'm not in Emma's scary house. I'm not in Emma's scary life. I'm safely here in Boston, in my snuggled with my puppy, and yet I am scared. So it's a fascinating thing to think about creating fear,
Mm.
through these pages. Um Yeah, so thank you for these fabulous thoughts. Welcome to the conversation, Margaret Pinard, joining us live from Portland, Oregon. So great to have you here. She's saying, "Oof, what a question, Sarah! I wonder if any crime writers have borrowed from political campaigns for how to leverage fear in their writing." That's a good point.
Wow, I think what
Oh,
was
yeah,
that? Oh, chocolate mine pretzel quote. Thank you.
yeah,
I think what was that Stephen King novel about the guy who was trying to assassinate the president who was going to set off a nuclear war or something?
yes,
So I
yes,
think it's very difficult because I think even in this world
yeah.
of such divisive politics,
Mm,
I think you're kind of sworn off putting too much into your books because
mm.
no editor is going to let it run. If you're slagging off or being horrible about one whole side of the political spectrum, all your publisher is seeing is like, well, those people aren't going to buy the book now. So, and I think I don't know. I think if you're writing a political thriller, different, but in a sort of psychological thriller, I think politics is so depressing. I don't think I'd want to spend any time writing anything political.
Totally. Courtney is saying that she gives you full permission to use the chocolate mind pretzel quote. You can have them all, Sarah. You can have them all. We have a mystery fan saying, "Oh my God, this is so exciting. This is so exciting. We're so happy to have you here." Queen Pinborough, thank you so much for joining in. And Catherine saying that Dark Matter is such a great book. It is literally chilling. Thank you for chiming in on that, Catherine. It's so great to know that it resonated. And just making sure I'm not missing anybody's thing. I want to remind y'all the book is out now and it is time to order it because you guys, this book is so good and you are going to want to get in the mind of this creepy genius, as Lisa Joel said. So grab it and support our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore right here. I'm popping the link into the comments. We have 2 minutes left with our time with Sarah. So anybody, I can probably take one or two quick last questions to get them going in the comments. Meanwhile, here is the link to the book. You're gonna want to be kept up all night by Insomnia. So grab
I
it
love the
now.
cover, that American cover. I really love it.
You do love it.
I really
Okay.
love it.
Do you have a favorite? I'll have to go look up the British cover now. Do you have
Yeah,
a
hang
favorite?
on. I've got a
Oh,
British
good. Let's
one.
hold it up.
So it's got
Ooh.
like broken glass on the front.
Do you is this so the American copy is your favorite then, Sarah?
Well, yeah, I mean, normally I like the English one better, and then you argue with the Americans for about 3 weeks to get the cover you want because we have such different cover sensibilities. The American covers and English covers are always so different. But this one, when they showed us that one, it was the fastest yes ever. Like all of us went, yep, we really like that. I mean, I do really like the English one too, but I think the American one has the edge for me. I think it's a bit sexier, it's a bit
Yeah.
creepier.
Because you
Yeah.
kind of see that you see her pacing the halls there.
Yeah.
Leela saying she likes the British cover.
Oh, I love it too. I really love the British cover too, but I really, they're both really good. But I find the American one is just, I think it pops a little bit more.
I think it pops. I also love how you can't really.
I love her hair going across her face.
Yeah.
I love
And I
that.
like how this M&O, you can sort of as soon as you see those wavy lines, you can sort of hear in your mind that zzz, zzz, sort of old TV scratchy going. So when I filmed my book talk yesterday, my TikTok book talk, I used a filter on it to create that same, they call it the 70s filter, to create that same disruption. Margaret Pinard saying it is so good and she thinks she saw someone still up at 1 a.m. reading it. Guilty. It was me. Anissa saying she usually likes the UK cover best, but she agrees that the US one is better this time. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you all for all of the wonderful comments. Thank you for all of the hearts up on Facebook. Y'all, the book is out now. I'm going to post the link one more time. Grab it now. And then, thank you for all the hearts, you guys. Grab.
Thank you, everybody who listened in.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for everyone who listened in. Catherine saying the contrasting blue and orange on the US cover really catches the eye better. I feel like I should be reading that with a British accent. It really catches the eye quite better. Um, it does, doesn't it? And orange is also one of my favorite colors. Catherine, thank you so much for the comment and for joining us live from Seattle. Y'all, the book is out now. Grab your copy and then hop over to the Mystery and Thriller Mavens Facebook group where all the good tea is spilled, as the cool kids say. So we continue the conversation about all things mystery and thrillers over there. So I'm going to post the link in the comments. So join us. It's free and open to all. And we just chat about all the books we love. So come on over and join us. Sara Pinborough, thank you so much for joining us here today, live from the UK. And y'all, I'll be back. Yay! And I'll be back tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern with Samantha Bailey here to give us the inside scoop on Watch Out for Her. See you soon for that. And in the meantime, have a great Monday for #Mystery Monday, because Mondays can be murder.